Okay, so this is my first like picture test thing with the DJI Action 2. So what I'm going to be doing here is very specifically testing for the difference between its normal color profile and also its D-Cinelike profile as well. Now what I've done here, I have set the camera to completely automatic for absolutely everything. I've got it in its wide mode and I've got the stabilizer switched off, and it is on a tripod. It is at an arm's length of where, if my arm is fully extended, it's about where my wrist is, which basically means that if I were holding this like on a pistol grip and holding it in front of me, it would be in a position where I would have a bend in my arm, typical for what I would use for vlogging. Obviously, you have a camera right out on your full arm's length and it's going to kind of tire you a little bit. Even with something as light as this, it'll tire you after a while. But nonetheless, this is a position which is very similar to my vlogging position, or exactly the same as me walking around vlogging position. Although what I'm doing here is not getting too close, because obviously there will be a focusing or a minimum focus issue that will come into play here. Hopefully I'm beyond that and the sharpness is okay. Anyway, with all that rabbiting aside, let me just switch over now to D-Cinelike and I will continue explaining what I'm doing for this particular test. Okay, so I've now switched over to D-Cinelike, and the whole point of this is just so that I can see exactly what goes on with the differences between its normal color profile and D-Cinelike. Now the thing with D-Cinelike, it's not really some kind of magical color profile which is going to give you a ton of latitude in post-production to push and pull the picture, because it's only 8-bit 420 anyway. But the thing is, I'm testing it just in case it's going to help me maybe with like shadows, because the thing is, most of the actions or all of the actions by DJI actually end up just crushing detail and stuff. That whole thing about limited dynamic range, it's not so much limited dynamic range with these things. However, what it does do, or what all three of them do, including up to the three, is they do have this kind of tendency to go crushing into like your shadows and stuff like that. So all I'm doing here is just to see if D-Cinelike is going to give me a little bit more back in the shadows and whatnot, and like not look so heavily contrasted as it does do with its normal profile. Now of course right now I've been standing directly in sunlight, so what I'm now going to do is move this little rig over into some shaded area and let's try it there. Okay, so I'm now over into this shaded area, but as we all clearly see behind me, it is a really bright day. So although I'm in shade, it is still bright. Now, the only thing that I don't really know about this camera, because again, this is the first of like my proper picture tests, is what does it do for its exposure when it's all set auto? Does it take like an average of everything? If so, is it going to be using like the brightness of the sky in the background as part of its kind of leveling for the automatic exposure routine and stuff like that? In fact, I'll try one more test. I've just thought about this. I'll point it into shadowed area as well and not just have all that blasting behind in the background. But nonetheless, right now everything is exactly the same with the camera's setup, but I've now gone back to the normal like color profile. So what I'm going to do for this right now is switch over to D-Cinelike. Okay, so I've now switched over to D-Cinelike. Exactly everything all remaining the same, and I am in shadow, but obviously it's a bright day and stuff, just to see if there's going to be much of a difference with the shadows and stuff as far as like using D-Cinelike is in this particular environment right now. Once again, me in shadow, but it is a bright day, which is obviously evident by the first takes in full sunlight, but also with the amount of sun that's behind me here. Now what I'm going to do as well, I'll actually turn the rig around and go somewhere where there's no kind of direct kind of like bright areas like behind me and stuff, and let's see what happens in this fully auto setup when I do that as well. Okay, so for the best part now then, I have got a background behind me which doesn't actually have any direct kind of like sky or sunlight in it. just so we can see what the auto exposure is doing with this type of thing here. I've also switched back to the normal color profile just now as well to give us an idea about this. Now the thing is, I know obviously, you know, I could be setting certain settings as well for my exposure. That is something that I will do in future videos. However, and despite the fact that I've obviously got the camera locked off on a tripod for this is to emulate typically what people would do when vlogging, as in you're not going to sit there messing around with manual exposures, because as you're walking around you're going to have to change those exposure settings every few seconds. So like I say, this is to emulate typically a fully automatic vlogging kind of like way of shooting. Now let me just switch over to D-Cinelike. Okay, so over onto D-Cinelike now, and hopefully whilst I've been using D-Cinelike on like the 3 different variations of the positions for the camera, I'm hoping that, you know, in there I am getting something with D-Cinelike as far as the shadowed area is concerned. And maybe right now, because there isn't like loads of direct sun behind through the sky and stuff like that, maybe the exposure was okay for normal and there wasn't like that much crushing going on into the shadows, but maybe it's actually getting better now with D-Cinelike and whatnot. Anyways, that should start like being the end of this video, and I'll just kind of round up exactly what I've done here. It's just me basic first test to see exactly what the differences are between the 2 color profiles, and basically I think I've given the camera enough opportunities between these 3 positions to kind of push it to where like it may be pushed to when doing fully auto kind of walking around vloggy stuff and things like that. I will however be doing more of like picture tests with this setup to do with the fully auto walking around vloggy thing, but it's things like this which are initially going to give me some kind of idea of where to go to with this stuff. Also as well, I'm going to do a video whilst I'm out now which is testing once again the fields of view and the variations of stabilization with them as well whilst I'm locked off. Now the main reason for doing this next video that I'm going to do is because there is obviously a bit of a huge difference as far as like softness and sharpness is concerned with the way the camera's filming stuff, depending upon which field of view and which type of stabilizer is being used. So again, a locked off version of something like that should be useful for people. It'll definitely be useful for me. Anyways, I'm David Harry. Thank you very much for watching this video. Take care and goodbye now.